cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Cause I'm the type of nigga that's built to last. If you fuck with me, I put my foot in your ass. See, I don't give a fuck cause I keep belling. Yo, what the fuck are they yelling?
Don't push me cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head.
Coming to you from the Edge Podcast Studios at South Mountain, Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to the Edge Podcast with Mike G. I have in studio today with me, Anthony, and I always say your name right. I like Dezilva.
That's correct.
Right. Because I always think of Tony Dezilva from NCIS when I think of you, man. So anyway, let me introduce you. So Anthony is a good friend of mine. He and I met recently in the Wisdom course through Landmark Worldwide. And, we did a weekend together and we had a pretty good time. We had a lot of fun there. And then we just connected over time, and I think we went to Denver together, and we've done some other stuff. So Anthony's just a great guy. I want you to give your resume or just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, because I don't have it all, but I know that you're a big deal.
So I specialize in information security, more from policy and procedure kind of perspective, doing the right things within an organization to protect customer data, organizational data. That kind of stuff.
Okay, awesome. And where did you school at?
So actually, my latest schooling, I got my global master's in global management at the Thunderbird School of Global Management up in Glendale.
One of many masters you have.
Actually, so technically I have 2 master's degrees, one from ASU, one from Thunderbird, but that was just because of the acquisition.
What about the PhD?
That's in progress.
In progress. He's working on it.
So I'm actually working on my PhD in information assurance at ASU with a combined judicial doctorate, which is law school.
Awesome, man.
So the goal there is to bridge the gap between information security and law, because I see a gap.
Yeah.
And like if you look at rules like the encryption laws we have, especially internationally, where you can only export 40-bit encryption, blah, blah, blah.
Wow. That's not very good.
Well, if you look at a lot of where our services come from right now, it's all over the world.
Right.
So there's no match between the laws and kind of where our services are. And if you're getting services like, I can't think of one right now, but if we're getting like a hosted-based service that's out of country, they can't have the same encryption that we have in the U.S.
Okay.
But what that's doing is weakening the protection of our data by using an international service.
Right.
Is it protection of industry? I don't know. I think we're in a world where we are a global world. We are a global technology, and we want to use the best services that's available. So I think protecting that information at the highest level of protection needs to happen.
Yeah.
And the laws need to catch up.
Yes, I agree. So the difference between, let's say, 40-bit encryption and let's say 1024, 256, 2048.
Yep.
Now we're in my wheelhouse because that's what I do. So every time every time I do a show, there's a nerd. There's a nerd on the show, and it's me. So my background is network engineering. I was also a flooring contractor. I've had multiple businesses and successful businesses. And but what's really interesting is the fact that we have this. It's not the same. It's incongruent across border lines. But here's the interesting thing: the internet has wiped out all border lines. I mean, not totally, because there's still some like China. We don't do a lot with China. We don't do a lot with North Korea. We don't do anything with North Korea when it comes to the internet, right?
Well, we actually do quite a bit with China.
Do we?
Yeah, and if you look at what Alibaba is doing and what Alibaba is trying to do by entering the U.S. market as a competitor to Amazon, actually, if you look on Amazon, if you can buy stuff from Amazon from the purchasing networks in China.
Wow.
Like I've ordered batteries and things like that, which is actually using the Alibaba infrastructure to actually complete the purchase.
Wow.
So it's even that I think is.
Amazon is the shit, man. I'm not even kidding, dude.
But I think going back to what you said, the borders, the internet has kind of closed, has opened up all those borders.
Right. It's
And-
erased them.
Yeah.
I really think that that's the case. So I think the internet has taken our world digitally to where our world is hopefully will go, where we can just erase all borders. We can then be one people, one planet, you know. And I know that sounds scary to a lot of people, but if you think about it, what if we could govern ourselves in a way that didn't allow for war, that didn't allow for, you know, these.
So at Thunderbird, we actually
Mhm.
have a saying
Oh, okay.
that goes, borders that are frequented by trade need no, I'm missing. Borders that are frequented by trade need no, it's like need no military.
Okay.
And basically the point is trade is the kind of the equalizer.
Hmm.
And if we are trading with with another country, if we're trading with a people, if we're communicating with people, why do we need a war?
Exactly.
Right? It's actually interesting. It's if use WhatsApp, whether you're talking to somebody in India, whether you're talking to somebody in China, whether you're talking to somebody in Korea, whether you're talking to somebody in the U.S., it is completely seamless. You can put them all in a group, and you can chat with everybody like nothing.
It's yeah.
Right? It's the communication has gone to a point. So if we can communicate with each other, family, friends, associates like that, why do we need to resort to war when we can just talk?
I know. I mean, so the funny thing is that, I mean, I'm a capitalist. I believe that we're all born equal with the right to become unequal. Not in a bad way. And I think that those people that, and really education is like the new thing. And when I say new thing, I mean new thing on a global scale where everybody has the same opportunity to have the same kind of education that allows us to elevate the species. Okay? So for instance, and the internet changes everything. So for instance, if you can get the internet in the hands of somebody who lives in Botswana or right anywhere in the world, you can get the internet to them. They have an opportunity through YouTube and multiple other providers to learn things. And what if we were to just get rid of the monetary? Because look, schools got to make money, right? They do. But when you're putting people into debt that's $300,000 to $400,000, $500,000 before they even make $1, and they're banking everything, like, and that's a high number. I mean, you know, if you're
it's so
maybe that's
when I'm all done, it'll be $300,000.
Yeah,
in schooling. So.
But out of that, you got 2 master's degrees and a PhD. Right, and
yeah, but that's still $300,000.
Still $300,000, so $100,000 each, right? And what's interesting is that what if you could take that and erase the $300,000 debt? How many people do you think would begin to rush to college to get the education we need to forward our world?
So, well, I think there's something else to that, which is and I'll kind of take an offshoot here. There's a buddy of mine who's working on a project that actually takes the Raspberry Pi and loads up
you gotta explain Raspberry Pi.
The Raspberry Pi is
pretend we don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Is a little computer that costs about $40. It runs Linux. Actually, now it runs Windows 10 for that matter, and it's a tiny little computer that can run off a USB battery. So it's like an iPhone, but it's a computer.
Raspberry Pi 2. I'm pulling it up on the internet right now. Hold on. Go ahead.
So
keep
just
talking.
Basically, it's like a $40 little computer. It can run Windows 10 now, or it can run Linux, and it can run. It's like a full computer.
Wow.
But the neat thing is, a full computer requires you to plug into a 110-volt electrical source or something like that.
That's a computer.
This thing can plug into any USB battery. Heck, for that matter, it can plug into
my Mophie.
Yeah, or it can plug into a solar charger.
Oh wow!
Okay. And run off a solar charger.
Oh man!
So the point is, it has very low power requirements.
Right.
And it's got the computing power enough to actually do things. Now, the goal here is these devices are cheap. These devices can be plugged into any old screen, and you can take this, you can load up the Khan Academy on it. So his goal was to load up the Khan Academy in an offline mode, get on the internet on an occasional basis, do the updates, download, go offline, and still have all the education. Like Khan Academy is just one example, right?
Yes.
Khan Academy has a bunch of education, YouTube, as well as text-based education.
And you're going to have to explain Khan Academy, because I don't think a lot of because these are all Star Trek terms. A lot of these terms are Star Trek terms, like tricorder. These are things that are actually real now.
Actually, pull it up. I don't know a whole lot about it, so let's just.
But it's just like Khan, like the Wrath of Khan, Kahn.
Yeah, just search for Khan Academy.
Academy.
There you go. Click on Start Learning now. See what comes up.
Check it out. So we can sign in with Facebook. I'm going to start my own deal here. That's me, because I want to join the Khan Academy.
And the deal is, you've got, like, Apple's got the Apple University. You've got a bunch of these different things, right?
Amazon has their own. Well, it's kind of.
Well, they have the books.
AWS.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazon Web Services.
Oh, no. See, I'm talking about Apple actually has Apple University, which
what?
you can actually do courses on.
What?
So you got Stanford courses.
You're kidding me.
No, you even actually have Thunderbird courses on there that you can do, and it's for free.
Wow.
So
all of it's free.
yeah, going back to the point, yeah, even Khan's free. So the point is, there's free education available on the internet now. Things like sciences, maths, how to do certain things in applications, even program iOS applications. So all of this stuff is like readily available online, and it's a matter of getting it to these people in these remote areas.
That's so
And
cool.
like, you can always do things like create a central satellite uplink where they can come get the data synchronized. I want to say there's a project in India where people have these electric scooters. Oh no, they have regular scooters. They ride it to work.
Okay.
They go home. They take the scooter battery off the scooter, plug it into the house, and run the computer for a period of time.
Wow.
Using that battery, then put it back in the scooter and go to work the next day.
Wow.
So that's how they get in electricity.
Yeah.
These Raspberry Pi devices can run off those. Wow. So now we've got an opportunity for those kids that are at home to actually be able to get on the internet, or at least gain access to this information, right?
That's incredible.
You look
man.
at what Google's doing with their internet everywhere, the internet balloons
Yep.
and the drones and all this stuff. We don't need, see, here in the U.S., we have internet all the time.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And it's everywhere.
But with offline technology, we don't have to have the internet all the time.
Right.
We can get a lot of this information just by a sporadic connection. An
Yeah.
hour,
Yeah.
15 minutes of internet access
Sure.
could download all this stuff to a local USB stick, run it off a device like the Raspberry Pi,
Right.
and have education for the rest of the night for these kids. Right? And it doesn't need to be kids. It could be anybody, right? It could be, I know as Thunderbirds, we've got a project in Afghanistan where we're empowering Afghanistan women to have businesses.
Wow.
And they're giving them microloans, like the thing in India
Yeah.
that was done where they were giving microloans to people to be able to start their business and
Yeah.
kind of build it up. We've got a project in Afghanistan. We've got projects all over the world like that. But now we can not only give them the money to start the business, but we can educate them on good business practices, how to market, how to even get access to the global market.
Wow.
Because what would it be like for somebody in Afghanistan, in a little village in Afghanistan, to be able to now take a product
Yes.
and put
I'm
it
thinking
on
of a product right now. Go ahead.
put it on like Amazon
Yes.
and be able to sell that product and fulfill on that product.
Global legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, well, let's talk
I
about
might buy me some Afghani. I might buy me some Afghani shit, man.
I'm thinking more consumable products. That
Yeah, it's consumable. It's consumable. There are medical benefits to it. No, it's consumable.
But again, the point is the technology is at a point where we are capable of doing this stuff.
It's incredible, man.
It's just a matter of doing it and possibly changing the laws
Yeah.
to facilitate some of these things to happen.
Wow, man.
Right? Because it really becomes. But I think, see, where I go with the laws is, you give somebody like that the ability to innovate. The things that they're going to innovate are going to be far superior than what it's innovate by need versus us, where we innovate because we just want to, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
The innovate from need tends to always come out a whole lot more creative.
I think so. And unfortunately, history shows us that many of the advances that we've made have happened during wartime. And that's fucking scary.
It's innovate by need.
That's right. And that's a huge need. So a lot of those like jet propulsion and other things that we now use, right, for delivering human beings from one part of the planet to the other, or goods or whatever, those are benefited by that technological jump. But really it came from World War II.
Well, you look at pretty much any technology that we now have as a consumable came from either NASA, came from the Jet Propulsion Labs, came from the group out in New Mexico.
Right.
Like it's it's some sort of military tech that was invented that has now been commercialized. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
So
what if we had? So that's the thing that I'm always forward looking. What if we had this? What if we had this ability to have technology erase the need for war? Apart from the whole, and then we can get into the oligarchy and all that stuff. But
it's not, to me, it's not technology that's going to do it. It's human connection.
That's what I was talking. Yes, because technology is just the piece we use, the telephone that we pick up to talk to you,
to enable the communication.
Right, absolutely. Because the relationships is what matters, and then finding the common ground, and then finding and then defining. Rather than having borders define who we are as a people, allow our cultures to just flourish.
Well, so let's go back to borders.
Okay.
What do borders and military do? What do countries do?
They're supposed to keep us safe.
Well, it segregates.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. It just creates segregation so that cultures can flourish. All of that.
Yeah.
But cultures flourish in a vacuum in that space.
Right.
So what the internet has done is it's broken those vacuums so that outside information can get in, and people can choose, do they want to put it into their culture or not? If you look at a lot of what's going on right now, people are afraid of that change. So you got things like what China tried to do with the what did they call it? Anyways, their little revolution that's now complete with the Reds. Everything that happened
Tiananmen Square. I remember that back in 1980s and 90s or whatever.
The Cultural Revolution in China.
Yes.
What that was designed to do was to stop the outside influence from impacting their culture.
Right.
Why? Who knows? You can get real political about it, but at the end of the day,
I don't know.
It was trying to control the impact of outside culture on what they had going on, right? But as we know, time has proved that that's not possible.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at China, I was just in China 6 months ago.
Right.
And it was not the experience I expected. It was like I was completely welcomed. We rode the subway.
Dude.
Like
did you get pushed?
No, that was Russia. That was a whole different conversation. But no, China was amazing. It was one of the best experiences I have had traveling the world. And
really?
I was impressed.
I'm intrigued. I think I want to go to China.
It was. So it's funny. I have this. Well, I shared this with you once before.
Yeah.
I have this thing about going to Mexico because I'm afraid of what's going on in Mexico.
They're gonna split you open and fill you full of drugs.
A friend of mine goes, so in the last year you've been to the Middle East, you've been to Moscow, and you've been to Beijing, and you're worried about Mexico? I was like, yeah, good point.
That's great.
But no, I think the simple thing is the internet, the technology has definitely facilitated the human-to-human contact.
Yeah.
And video conferencing like Skype and FaceTime has taken that to the next level.
Right.
When you can see somebody and talk to somebody, the impact of, like, if you send an email, you can be the biggest asshole in the world because it's an email. It's an offline communication, right?
Right.
But if you're looking that person face to face, well, even if it's in a Skype session or video conference session, you have a different relationship with that person.
That's right.
You're going to second guess that communication that you would have normally done via email, right? And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Human to human contact is what stops the need for war.
Yes.
Human to human contact is the ability to resolve conflict. As human beings, we all care for the same thing. We all care for our safety. We all care for our family's safety, and we all care that our family does well, right? You can't tell me there's anybody that doesn't care for their kids,
Right.
right?
If the basics are provided for, and believe me, I'm not a socialist. I don't believe in the socialist agenda, but I believe that if you can make sure that the basics are taken care of for people, so they've got food, they've got clothing, they have a safe place to sleep.
Safe is probably the
to
key.
sleep
Well, safe
and
period.
live. Safe, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at all conflict, so I'm a big subscriber of Dr. Donna Hicks's theory on conflict. It's called conflict theory, and what that is unsolvable conflict or real conflict stems from a dignity violation. If you've got a dignity violation with somebody, there's nothing possible to be created till that dignity is restored.
Oh man.
So dignity, an insult to somebody's dignity could just be like you say something, and I
perfect example, Baltimore. Cop kills a black kid, right? And the whole community, the black community is now up in arms. Dignity's been lost. Why did he get killed? Questions aren't being answered. People don't know.
Well, so let's
and there's a hype to it.
Well,
let's
take that to a second. It was not about the cop killing the black kid, right? It was about how the situation was handled.
Yeah.
Where the black people didn't feel like there was dignity. They were treated with dignity.
Police brutality is rampant in certain areas.
But that's
it's not all cops that do it. Believe me,
and
I'm not that guy.
And
right? I believe it
all,
happens, but I don't believe it's every cop.
And that's all a factor of a dignity violation. If you really look at it, right?
I agree.
Somebody got their dignity hurt, and in this case, it was a whole population of people, right?
Yeah.
But really, if we can restore that dignity, a lot of these conflicts will go away, right? But where
all lives matter.
Yeah. And so that there's the whole thing. All lives matter.
All lives matter, because the big thing right now is Black Lives Matter, right? And now there's certain people that are saying take up arms and all
but
this.
what are we
and
going to do with that?
Right.
We're just going to make it unsafe for everybody.
Yeah.
But honestly, it goes back to if you put everyone in a room, sat down, it won't be that conversation. That's
true.
Right?
Yeah,
and I think going back to the topic where we started all this from was the technology enables that.
Yeah.
Technology is one thing. I think education is another piece of that.
Absolutely.
Let's look at this. What does education offer? The chance to do better, right? Going back to that, feeling safe, feeling that your family is taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. If you have education and you can provide better for your kids, you're gonna care more about keeping the peace.
Right.
If you're in a world where you believe that you have no other options and you got nothing to lose, then you can do the things that are being done today, right?
Right.
But if education can provide you opportunity, if education provide you an opportunity to better for your family, you're going to take that. It's like the whole thing of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Why do we care that China is becoming more of a market economy? Because the more market economy they become, the more capitalist they become, the more they have to lose, the more they're going to care about keeping the peace.
Yeah.
Right.
And hopefully they're going to change some of their labor. And
that'll drive itself. Again,
yeah,
it goes back to
because it's pretty
the
bad.
minute a person sees opportunity to do better, they're going to take that down that path.
Yeah, let's.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
If you look at any oppressed regime, the people when they believe they can't do any better, you can be a certain way. But when you are given that opportunity that you can now create something better for your family, create all these things, would you rather go to war or would you rather try to keep the peace and make this better and give your family something to look forward to?
Well, it's almost like this. I mean, the question that comes out: would you rather go to war or would you rather go to work?
Yeah.
Would you rather provide for your family or would you rather be hunkered down in some bunker somewhere trying to avoid being
and I think this is where
bombed.
education and communication kind of play a key role. And this is why, like, going back to that project we're talking about with the Khan Academy and the Raspberry Pi, I'm a big believer that education is the key to changing the world. and take that and add communication on top of it with the technology we have, you've now changed how we interact with each other. And I think we go a long way to resolving a lot of these, I almost want to say, artificial conflicts that are thrown up because people are feeling unsafe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The more people feel safe, the less you'd want a conflict.
Right. You know what? And the interesting thing is that the borders are just they're all made up. They're not real. There's no, I mean, you can walk right across unless there's a fence there.
Yeah, but again, who put the fence up?
Right, exactly. And why? Safety reasons. So it's an interesting, you know what? I believe, and I also believe that education is the key. And I believe that that technology is the delivery system for that. And I think that, man, this is a brave new day. This shit was not possible 10 years ago.
So I want to add one more thing into that.
Please.
And so one of the things, again, I keep focusing on Thunderbird just because it's the biggest impact on me. But one of the things as a Thunderbird we believe in is a statement we all ask ourselves is, if not me, who? Right? Responsibility. But I now take that to the IT world. Yeah. As senior IT people, you, me, and a whole bunch of other people we know, if not us, who? Right. We just talked about technology being that access, being that key, right? And we are educated as technology people. Mm-hmm. We may not be educated in politics, we may not be educated in law, but we are certainly an educated population that is the key to what's possible. So I think I go back to, it is the responsibility of anybody in tech to take this further, not just as tech, but as an access medium for providing the framework to achieve all of these goals. Right? Yeah. So as we invent technologies, as we play through our technologies, as we implement technologies, right, it is up to us to now build that infrastructure that facilitates all of this to make it happen, right? Yeah. The laws are the laws, right? But if we build it, like if you look, like everyone's still struggling to control communication on WhatsApp. Everyone's struggling to control what iMessage has done. Everyone's struggling to control email, right? You can't. You can't. And it's organic. It grows. And if we build technologies that make it easier for people to communicate, make it easier for people to have face-to-face conversations, make it easier for people to be educated, to make choices, right? That have all the information they need to make the choices we want them to make. Then it's up to us to build these technologies and distribute these technologies and put some effort into making sure that it's a uniform access to everyone in the world, not just North America, not just LDCs, less developed countries, but everybody, and everybody equally.
I agree. I completely agree. Now the world as such, okay, we have borders. Let's just go way off the edge. Okay,
we have physical borders.
We have physical borders, but what if through technology we were able to erase all borders, allow human beings the same uniform access to education, to data, to information, to make themselves better, right? And it's real simple, right? Because there's so much available, especially with these new technologies that we're seeing.
So I think we're already there.
Well, we're close. But here's the interesting thing: we still have borders, and those borders exist no longer. I think. Well, okay. So let's say we wiped out all those borders. We still have borders. Those borders exist electronically, digitally, firewalls, Palo Altos. We're able to filter out those things that don't belong in our network, right? That could be harmful, right? So the new attack on human beings would not any longer be, well, maybe not any longer be physical war, but might be digital war. And that's the other piece that's a little bit scary, but can also be managed. But how would you deal with that?
Well, you go back to it's simple. It's as security people, what are the attacks we see, right?
Yep.
There's
DDoS.
I look at it really as three types of attacks. Somebody wants to get something from you, some information that's proprietary that they want to use against you.
Okay.
Somebody wants to, like DDoS and stuff like that, are like service denial attacks. They
Denial
want to
attacks.
just make it difficult for you to do what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
And you got all kinds of reasons to do that. And the third thing is they just basically want to use your infrastructure to do something else. They
Okay.
want like a bot, right?
I got it. Yeah.
A 0 day. What they're doing is they're using you as a tool to attack somebody else,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So if you take those three types of attacks,
What about theft?
well, that goes back to the first one, right?
Okay,
Somebody
okay.
wants something that you have.
Okay, got it.
But if you look at that, if you look behind, who are the actors that want to do this? Yeah, you got the people that have something to prove, so they're going to shut you down because they don't agree with what you're doing as a business, all of that, right? So what I call the script kiddies and
Right, yeah.
somebody with a cause.
Sure.
But then if you really look at a lot of the attack profiles, it's organized crime. There's a reason
Yeah.
they're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's profiting from it. Like if you look at a lot of the attacks we see, it's organized crime. Somebody is actually doing it because credit card numbers, for example.
Yeah.
Why do they want the credit card numbers? Somebody's making money by selling, not just selling them, but by using those credit card numbers to take cash out.
Right.
Even if it's a dollar times $1 million is $1 million.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if they get 1 million credit card numbers, they just made $1 million. It makes it all worth it,
Yeah.
right? So this goes back to credit card technology, Apple Pay, things like that.
Mhm.
Credit card technology that we have today, we've already proved doesn't work. Let's change it.
Yeah,
Let's innovate.
Let's change it.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's look at Apple Pay. Apple Pay, the methodologies, you're not using a single credit card number, you're using a transaction ID,
That's right.
right? Well,
Google Wallet does the same thing.
Google, whatever the technology is.
Yeah.
So I think we're at that point where we're going, okay, well, we need to change. Now, will they find a vulnerability? It's sure.
Mhm.
But it's a matter of keeping the change.
Right.
If you look at most of our North American technology or industry, we've kept technology the same and we've milked it till we can't milk it anymore. Right? How long have credit cards been around?
Oh man.
You honestly tell me we didn't have the technology to change it? We did.
Yeah.
Look at the whole chip and pin thing,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
It's like the technology has existed in Europe for I don't know how many years.
Hmm.
We're only finally moving to it,
Yeah.
right?
I just got one. I just got a new credit card in the mail, and they said, thank you so much. Has a new number on it.
Yeah.
And I thank you so much for being at that, and we're updating your credit card and whatever. And now there's a chip in it, and now I can just I don't swipe it. I just slip it in, let it sit there, do my PIN if I'm doing a PIN or if it's a credit card transaction. It's reading it off the chip, and then I pull that out. And
So even that I don't believe is
I don't know how. Yeah.
I don't know if it adds much value
Yeah.
over the magstripe.
It's a different way of doing it.
Yeah, all it's going to do is take all the magstripe copies away.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got to copy the chip. It's like it's half the solution, right?
It's still hackable. Those chips are those are chip.
So,
But
the point, like if you look at Apple Pay, this is why I'm a big believer in the Apple Pay model.
Well,
Even
you're
the
an
Google-
Apple guy.
Well, even the Google
Yeah.
the Google Wallet model,
Yeah.
right? Is the transaction ID based sales is one step better than anything else we're doing,
Mm.
right? Why are we not adopting it, right?
Yeah.
We're trying. And
Widespread. It's kind of a choice right now. Right
yeah,
now,
and
it's
I think
a choice.
Apple's done a great job about. And I'm not trying to promote Apple.
No. It's the technology we're talking about.
I just like the way the technology is.
Yeah.
And you look at what Amex is doing with Apple.
Mhm.
Amex has done a hell of a job trying to move down that path. Right?
There's a lot of thinkers at Amex. Really, yeah.
Well, Amex has tended to be on the front line of at least the kind of this revolution, right? You've got Citi that's coming up trying to doing the same thing. If you look at the Citi credit card, now anybody makes any charge on my credit card, it pops up on my phone on my Apple Watch.
Wow.
I know if somebody's done a fraud transaction the second it happens.
Wow.
Right? That's huge.
That is huge.
Because now you put the security right into a device that I have with me at all times.
And now it's in your hands and not the hands of some, LifeLock or something like that, where they're watching your accounts, or they're not watching your accounts. They're just watching, a trillion different points of data.
Well, and some sort of AI system is flagging it, right?
Yeah.
But again, now you just added one more layer to it,
Yeah.
right? One more layer of security, which I think is great. because now if I see I'm sitting here and I see a transaction go through on any of my cards, I already know it's fraud because I'm sitting here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Makes you the best person to throw the flag up,
Yeah.
and then from there, I think maybe you have a transaction ID when you throw the flag up, and then that says, hey, listen, this is the real deal. This guy's the real deal. Let's go ahead and cancel that transaction, and let's go ahead and see if we can find out what video. Now I'm being CSI or NCIS. So you're Tony Dezilva, and I'm Gibbs. Go ahead.
Oh God. No, you're not Gibbs.
I'm not.
And no, I'm not going to be McGee either.
No.
Anyways,
I love it.
I
love
you can tell what geeks watch.
It's a great show, man.
No,
13 seasons now.
Yeah, actually, I just paid for the new season.
Did you? That's awesome.
Man. Of course, I'm buying it on Apple TV.
Well, yeah.
I don't like watching the commercials. So.
Nobody does. That's another thing. That's a whole other thing. I mean, that's another.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. A whole other podcast.
We could go down that road too, but definitely yes.
Where was it going? Oh, so what's interesting is the whole connection with law enforcement and the information security.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look, you got two priorities. As a business person, you're all about stopping the attack, getting back to business.
Right.
Unfortunately, that conflicts with what law enforcement needs, because law enforcement needs the ability to continue to see the attack so they can gather the data to actually find out where the source is.
Yeah,
right?
kind of like when they're tracing a call, the guy's got to be on the phone for a certain period of time, like 12 seconds or whatever it is. So when they're on the phone for that length of time, it's at that point that they can then say, well, we traced it.
Well,
same thing, right?
And as security people, what have we done? We've already shut the computer down. We shut the link down.
Oh, yeah, we turned that thing off,
we've
man.
turned
It's
that crap
unplugged,
out.
no power. Yeah.
So
Too late. Sorry, guys.
So what I think we have to come up with is a way to better track data and communicate with law enforcement so that we can kind of come to some middle ground
Right.
that makes it easier for both things to happen.
I think and that's possible, and it's being done now, because anytime you have an intrusion detection device or an intrusion prevention device, there are ways to then route that traffic over to a honeypot and allow forensics to take place.
Yeah.
But again,
It's a very
the
expensive-
attacker, it's expensive, but the attacker can also notice if they're watching that there's been a switch.
Yeah.
So it's almost like spinning up a VM that's exactly identical to the server that you're running in a DMZ and then pushing that traffic over. And there's some cloning and some other shit going on, but yeah.
So I think as technology, like if you look at what Palo Alto's doing.
We don't want to give away all the secrets.
Yeah, if you look at what Palo Alto's
Right.
doing and a few others
Love
are doing,
Palo Altos, man. Those firewalls are bomb.
I think we're getting better and better at that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is for most non-Fortune 500 companies, that's a cost and an infrastructure component that they don't have, right?
Yeah.
And especially now when you start talking about cloud technologies and stuff like that.
Infinite computing and
Well, the challenge is if you're in a cloud environment,
Mhm.
you don't have that level of flexibility that you would to have all of those pieces in play, right?
yeah.
So now we're starting to put the burden on cloud providers to provide that infrastructure, right? So the costs are going to go up, and the whole value proposition goes off whack again.
Yep.
It also, I think, as a cloud provider, you're now taking on more and more risk. Like cloud providers have been satisfied with just providing infrastructure, and you put whatever you want on here. Well, I think if you look at what the FCC just came up with, where they're starting to hold vendors and businesses accountable for their breaches, we are now starting to hold cloud providers. You could potentially hold cloud providers responsive for breaches.
Wow.
Right. So again, we're going back into the whole how
Yeah.
laws play into this whole information security field.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, we've kind of gone on two topics. And we've gone on the whole education and communication. And we've
That's
gone
what
on
this is all
information
about.
security.
That's what this is all about. The Edge podcast, really, we just want to take it right out there and expose people to what maybe they don't know about, maybe what they're not typically interested in. But having you in studio today, man, this is a real treat for me because I'm a total nerd. I love this stuff, man. I'm not kidding. My juices get going. I start thinking about things that I've been involved in, some of the technology that I've worked with. So yeah, keep going. I don't care. We'll go all over the place. But yeah.
Well, going back to that, I think it comes back to where we are. I think currently in the industry as business owners, as providers of service, we have to now take responsibility for protecting our customer information, even and our own proprietary intellectual property. Right.
Right.
Intellectual property is the key to any business. But where in the past we've just protected our intellectual property, we now have to protect our customer information.
Right.
It's simple. It's our business. You lose your customer information, you could lose your business.
You will lose your business.
I don't buy the whole Ashley Madison saying that the business is growing after the hack thing. But anyways, where I was going with that is it's the responsibility of the organization, but it's also what now provides the best customer service. Right? It's if you're protecting your information, you're protecting your customers, you're providing the best customer service to your customers. You've taken responsibility for that.
Right.
And I think that's going to become a success factor inside of the organization.
I think it'll be a metric across the board.
As IT people, this is cool for us.
Yes.
Because, well, if you look, honestly, as IT people, till the last couple of years, we were the same as facility services.
Yeah, pretty much.
We just provided a service.
Pretty much,
It's like the janitor and the IT person were treated the same. All IT people are going to agree with this one because this is the frustration we've had years and years and years and years. Is the business doesn't listen to IT on what needs to happen, and now they're forced to listen to IT, which is great because obviously technology runs most of our business.
Yeah.
Technology automates things. Technology plays a huge role in making sure businesses are successful.
Yeah.
Well, it's now technology's role to make sure all that is also protected.
Yeah,
right?
and that's a culture shift.
So
that's going to take a culture shift, I believe.
And it's now CEOs are held responsible for data breaches. The CEOs have to come back to our biggest, I guess, bitch session has been why a technology vice president is not an executive vice president that sits on the board, right? And then we're getting to a point where technology is represented at the board level.
Yes.
Right? And that's a huge shift in the recent years.
Yeah.
And I think it matters. Well, it's now forced to matter.
Well, CTOs and CIOs right now, I'm pretty sure, typically sit on the board, don't they?
Not that I've seen to. I think they're starting to.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Typically, CTO reports to the CIO, who reports to the president, who reports to the CEO, and only the president and the CEO are typically on a board. Right.
Yeah.
Other than a technology company, of course.
Yeah.
But I think now we're starting to see that shift where CTOs, CIOs in particular, or a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, sits at that board level and is accountable to the board to do all the right things to protect customer data.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself shifts and goes a long way to protect us. And now going back to how do we tie that in with doing the right things by law enforcement, being able to do all of these things, right?
Yeah. What are the major challenges law enforcement faces because certain laws aren't stringent enough or they're just not in place?
Well, I know one, which is the extradition laws.
Okay.
Right. Why is people from East Europe able to hack and do it regularly? We can't extradite them. We can't really enforce any laws over there. We can't do a lot of those things.
Right.
So they have free reign. Right.
That's a problem, man.
Well, it is a problem. But again, it goes back to it is also organized crime.
Yeah.
Right.
Drone strikes. I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Shit.
Well,
President Obama, you're known for a couple of great things.
Drone strikes on hackers. That's great. That'll definitely make hackers think twice about it.
Hell yeah! I got your IP address, motherfucker. We're gonna drop a bomb on you.
Well, that's not saying we can't.
But that's
See,
war, right? And
well, it is war.
Yeah, and I'm not out for that. But
Actually, just take a sidebar of that.
yeah,
As IT security people, we are the next soldiers.
yeah,
We are at war on the IT field. Now, the difference is we have technology on our side. We're still on IP version 4.
right.
Why not move to IP version 6
Yeah,
and actually implement things within IP version 6 that actually identify a machine, so that things like wrapping your IP address and proxying around the world becomes a whole lot harder, right? Why not have network authentication or network two-way handshakes between computers and devices?
right.
Why not move to two-factor type authentication for even network traffic alone?
Yep.
There's a lot of things we can do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the technology exists. We just haven't commercialized it.
Well, we have it. Cisco has the Identity Services Engine. It's called ICE, Cisco ICE, and I just deployed one over at LifeLock. We did a proof of concept on that, and it's actually that. It's two-factor authentication. You're going to authenticate your machine certificate and then your own profile certificate, so user certificate. That sounds like a bunch of gibberish to people that are listening right now that don't know anything about technology. And I want to jump back off of that right now to IPv4 and IPv6. Explain the differences between what IPv4 is and IPv6. And let me just jump in there real quick. IP is Internet Protocol. It's what your machine is given when you log onto a network, typically through what's called DHCP, Dynamic Host Control Protocol. And it reaches out and says, I need an IP address so that people know how to get to me. And then the server delivers that IP address to your machine accepts it, and then it's able to work on the network. IPv4, I'll just hand that off to you now.
Well, so let me take that a step even higher.
Okay.
So IP, the IP protocol, is equivalent to a language that we speak.
That's good.
Right. So the all the internet and all the pipes and all of that is the medium of communication. So it's like whether you're on a phone or whether you're talking face to face, that's all that other stuff. The IP, the protocol layer, is really, are we speaking in English? Are we speaking in Chinese? Are we speaking, not Chinese, are we speaking in Mandarin? Are we speaking in German, right? That's what IP is. So IPv6 and IPv4 are just different layers of that language. How much more complicated or fluent in a language you are. I don't know. You know more about IPv6 than I do.
No, I don't. Trust me.
So and well, therein lies the challenge. Yeah. So you've got two senior IT people in the room who couldn't explain what the heck IPv6 really is, other than we're going from a 16-bit,
a 32-bit.
32-bit to a 64-bit
right
space. Basically, it means you can talk to more devices.
Yeah, it's exponentially more. So in IPv4, you're a 32-bit. You have there's 60. I think there's a lot of IP addresses available. You also have private IP space, but you would think IPv6 would be, it's 64-bit, so it's 32-bit, so it's 64. So we're just going to double it, right? We're just going to double the amount of IP addresses, and we're talking about amount of IP addresses that you can use in the world today. And IPv4 is like, let's say, Canada and the U.S., right? And IPv6 would be the equivalent of enough IP addresses for the galaxy.
Well, I think the challenge is this, and this is what I want to go back to, which is you've got two people in the room that do this for a living and can't explain what the heck this thing does and how to implement it.
And what I said was probably really wrong, but it gives you an example.
So it goes back to, here's our challenge.
Yeah.
Right? If we can't explain it, how the heck are we going to implement it?
Exactly.
Right? So we need to make technology a whole lot easier to implement, so that you look at most 14-year-olds out of high school now come out with some sort of Microsoft certification, and they go into these organizations to implement this technology. Yeah. Well, we need to make this kind of stuff easy for them to implement. Yeah. Right? To date, we've had programming a Cisco switch, which is just a device on the network, is not an easy task. You
Yeah.
go through tons and tons of training. You go through a very rigorous certification process. This is great for the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the senior people in IT is a smaller number than needs to be.
Yeah.
And businesses are changing so rapidly, businesses are growing so fast, you don't have space for all these senior people.
Right.
So we need to make things easier and easier to implement so that these security mediums, the security mechanisms, the complexity gets taken out so we can do a better job on our networks, right?
Yeah.
Things like encryption as standard. Today, everything is wide open. If you look on most local area networks, we're not using encryption on it, right?
Right.
We're not even using 802.1x on our switch. 802.1x is basically an authentication medium, going back to what we talked about two-factor, that if you plug in your computer into any jack in the wall, you have to authenticate against that before you can get on that network.
Right.
This technology has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
Again, it's been so complex, we can't implement it.
Yeah.
So
It's implementing now.
yeah, well, we're forced to,
But
right?
and it's at a time when it's not just appropriate, but it's actually needed. It's like what you said, it's needed.
Yeah.
Like because the sophisticated hacks that are happening now are next level. Some of this shit's next level. And LifeLock got hacked, and Home Depot got hacked, and I mean these are companies that know what they're doing, right?
So going back
Yeah.
to my little soapbox now.
Go ahead, go for it.
So if you look at most businesses today, we relate to information technology as when I get hacked. Sorry, if I get hacked, I'll worry about it.
Right.
Right. And so most IT people, especially us in the security role, sit there, start the morning with, please don't let me get hacked today. We go through a little prayer every morning, and we leave the office going, thank God we didn't get hacked today.
Right.
I can go home now. And it's somebody else's problem for the next 6 to 12 hours.
Right.
The problem is, one thing we know how to do really well in business is crisis communication.
Mm-hmm.
We have entire marketing roles. We have entire people trained in crisis communication and how to handle that. Well, what would it be like if we change our perspective from if I get hacked to when I get hacked? And we actually profile the type of hacks that we could get hacked on. And we actually have a crisis communication plan for every one of those attacks. So what if we say, we know we can get hacked by somebody compromising the website?
Yeah.
What if we have that profile and say, if this happened, we engage this team, we engage this legal resource, we engage this communication company to communicate with our users, and here's the mitigation strategies. Because what happens in a hack is we start running around like chickens with our heads cut off.
God, it's happened, yeah.
And then we try to figure out what to do next. And at the end, we don't communicate well with the people affected.
Yeah, it's a
which
big mess.
creates, going back to, a dignity problem with the people because they now feel violated.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what if we communicated to them the minute it happened, and we say, these are the things we're taking to protect you, and these are the things that you need to worry about or not worry about because we've already thought of this and we've got you protected.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
As a customer, how would you relate to that business?
I would absolutely love that business.
Yes, loyalty. You
totally.
build the customer loyalty.
Absolutely.
So my whole soapbox for every organization is simple. It's when we will get hacked, and have a crisis communication plan long before that happens. Because executing a checklist is a whole lot easier and a lot more efficient than trying to figure that checklist out inside of a crisis situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is stuff we know how to do. Why aren't we doing it for technology?
Yeah.
Right? It is now. Yes, it takes money. Yes, it takes some effort. But what it does is it protects your business by protecting your customer.
Yeah. Well, and it's just as simple as like when you first set up an account with Amazon, right? And you put in your credit card. So same thing. Once you've done it, it's done. Same thing. When you go in there and you set up your checklist and you have everything in place and you know who the players are, it's kind of like if you have an emergency evacuation, right? You typically, most companies now have a situation where they have what are they first responders, and they're just people that work there, but they've been trained in CPR and other things. Okay, so building's on fire. There's a protocol. Boom, you follow that protocol, right? Click the button. Boom, off it goes. Same thing here. Man, that's beautiful. And why aren't we thinking this way? That's a forward-thinking kind of.
So that's why my motivation to do my PhD in the field is, because I think there's a lot we can do to get businesses there.
Dude, you're going to be in high demand. No, I mean it. I mean, on the forefront of everything that's coming forward, right? Or you could do a TED Talk. All right, I'm going to nominate you for a TED Talk. I think that'd be great.
No, well, all seriousness, this is why I totally see that as a gap that we have, even in the information security. For all the progress we've made in information security, what we don't have. Well, IT people, right? We're still struggling. IT people are still struggling to be business people,
right?
And I think we're now forced to be business people. We're starting to think like business people. We're not just the geeks that sit and play with routers and switches and programs, right? Where we, as IT execs, a CTO, like I go back to a CTO, a CIO, should not be touching code, should not be touching routers, should have the understanding of technology, but have a bigger understanding of business. Right. So I'm a big believer that any senior IT person needs to have an MBA. No plug for MBA education here, but I'll tell you from my experience, I walked in 22 years in the IT field, worked in various business roles. I thought I knew business. I walked into my MBA going, good God, I don't know a damn thing about how to run a business. Yeah. Till you do your MBA and you do the finance side, and let's not even talk about global. When you start talking about global, you're talking about things like hedging, which basically is planning for currency exchange issues, planning for supply chain issues in other countries, planning for laws and changes in regimes in other countries, all of that impacts business, right? Yeah. And we're talking about global business. Yeah. So all of this matters. So now a business person needs to understand a simple thing like what happens when China's policy to change from a fixed value against the dollar for their currency to a market-based currency, right? What happens when you change your interest rate? How this impacts the U.S. changes the interest rate, it impacts every other country and the evaluation of their currency. Wow, yeah. Like how does all of that play through? What does all that mean? That an IT person needs to now understand that, because here's the deal. If you're putting a data center in Indonesia, do you understand the impact of a regime change on that data center? We don't think about that stuff, right? But here's the deal. If the regime changed, and I'm just picking on Indonesia for no reason. Yeah, let's say
they're stable.
Let's say India. Let's say Sri Lanka. Let's say Australia. Right,
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Well, what happens when? Never mind. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. No. So, but what happens if there's a regime change that is non-favorable to technology, and they decide to raid that data center and take everything over? Right. What happens to your data? What happens to intellectual property? What happens to your ability to perform? But going back, more importantly, what happens to your intellectual property? Yeah. And what happens to your customer data? Right. So these things matter. So now IT people need to understand the geopolitical stability of a country, need to understand the economic impact of a country, need to even understand the economic impact of currency and kind of the economic policy, because all of that plays a role in protecting the customer, protecting that data, protecting the business, right? So I think we've now, as IT execs, we've changed the profile of an IT exec. You're no longer an exec that can grow up from being a programmer to go through the chain and just become a CTO. Right. Especially as CIO, I think you now have a responsibility to really understand not just business, but global business. Right. So and this is why I go back to an MBA at the CIO, CTO level. I think is a really important thing, because. Do
you have a recommendation of a school?
Of course I do.
Well, what school would you recommend?
Well, no, I think.
No, I mean, I'm serious. What school would you recommend?
Any major school that provides MBAs. I put it this way: any MBA is better than no MBA.
Okay.
Is my recommendation there, right?
Okay.
But I would strongly recommend that you have a focus on global.
Okay.
Especially even if you're not a global company, you need to have a focus on global because global variables impact. Even a Phoenix-based company buys raw material from some other country in the world.
Right.
Right. An issue like a volcano blowing smoke up in the air can delay a plane by 6 hours. Well, if that plane was carrying your supplies or had an impact on your supply chain, well, guess what? Even as a Phoenix-based company, you just had an impact. Your production could be affected by that.
Right.
Right. So it matters.
Yeah.
So no longer are we isolated, regional, hegemon-based entities. We have everything in the world can impact a business, even if you're producing cookies in Phoenix for people in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So
Where do you get your sugar from? Where do you get your flour
Yeah.
from? Where do you get your?
So I think it's a really important thing to have business education as part of it. But now I go back to you're now starting to frequent in trade.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you're frequenting in trade, you have no reason for conflict.
Exactly.
Right. You're going to solve the conflict. You're going to be more interested in solving conflict than having conflict persist.
And because it's those things that mutually benefit each party.
Yep.
Right. And where the conflict would have existed, you can eliminate because you have a mutual benefit there.
You have an interest in solving that conflict.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's good stuff, man. So now that we have a baseline for what we're doing, right, with the executives, we have, we know that IT is actually going global. And that what you said was interesting. If you're going to be an executive in a company and you're an IT guy and, you started out like me, right? I was a circuit jockey. What that is a circuit would go down and I would call the local exchange carrier and I would
communications technician.
I would tell them, hey, my circuit's down. I can't get to my site or this remote site. And they would, either fix it or dispatch somebody to go out there and fix it or something like that. Okay. From that, which is very low level, to, being involved in the implementation design of data centers. And I've had one that was just extraordinary, was American Express. The difference is that take a guy like me, let's say I wanted to become a CIO or a CFO or a CTO, a CIO.
Forget CFO.
CFO.
That's a whole different.
Sorry, misspoke. I almost got slapped. Because those guys are the enemy of IT, number crunching bastards. Anyway, so yeah, if I was going to go that way, the MBA would be the way because I got to know what my business is doing technologically, not just here in Phoenix, but worldwide. And the impact is huge, right? Everything you're talking about, it's very smart. What's the word I want to use? It's an intelligent way of looking at how business is run, not only through IT, security, and in a global landscape, but everything that's out there that is not in your control could be affected. Yeah. And the MBA could help you mitigate some of those.
At least understand them.
Unknown, or
once you understand them, you
the
can come up
unknown
with
variables. Yeah, come up with some kind of a plan to make it all work.
Because cool. you don't have to be the solution to everything.
No,
you just have to understand where the problems are. Because then you can tell people that are smarter than you where the problem is and let them find the solution.
Right. And then that gets handed down to us, the team.
Yeah. Well, I think it's any leader, a good leader surrounds themselves with people smarter than they are. Right. Because as any individual, there's no way you can comprehend all the different variables and all the different aspects. But then it comes back to creativity. All of these things come with creative solutions. The more minds looking at things from different angles and different creativity levels, the better the solution.
Have you heard about this thing, folding proteins? Yeah. You heard about that where they created a game. Guy created a game for folding proteins. Put it up on the internet and allowed people to come in and join this game. Didn't matter who you were. And they had over 100,000, I think it was, people participating in folding proteins. The idea of folding proteins was to, to support some action that they were looking to do, maybe creating or generating new amino acids or whatever. Who knows? Turns out this woman who was in the UK is the number one protein folder in the world. And I think she's like an executive assistant or something like that for some, I don't know, nonprofit. And by day, she's an executive assistant. And by night, she's the world's best protein folder. And how that happened was she has this unique talent for folding proteins. Crazy, right? You wouldn't think this is somebody. It's not a.
So, well,
Come closer to the mic.
Have you ever read the book Ender's Game?
Yes.
So if you look at Ender's Game, now that's on warfare, right?
Right, yeah.
It's the same concept, right? It's like you get people playing games to solve real world problems.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
That's
the only
exactly
thing
what it was.
Yeah.
The difference is that they opened it up to the whole world, and there were a whole bunch of people that got involved.
Why couldn't we do that with security?
Well, imagine this. So how many people are right now? How many people are right now on the internet or have access to the internet globally? Something like 3 billion.
I don't know. It's a lot.
Something like that. And there are 7 billion on the planet.
7.2, I believe.
7.2. And then let's just say you were to fill in the rest, or at least double that. Let's say we had another 3 billion added to the internet using the technology that we're just talking about, Raspberry Pi, and what was the other one?
The new Microsoft
stuff.
The Microsoft sticks.
Right.
The Intel sticks. Right?
Intel sticks. So you have this technology that's available, right? And you can get people onto the internet. And like you said, maybe not all the time. Maybe it's intermittent. Who knows? Maybe an hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever. But it's low cost. It's low. Anybody could get on, right? I can afford a couple of these and send them to Sri Lanka. Okay. And I could, as a human being, if everybody did that, right, everybody in the world would have at least a computer to work on, have access to knowledge and education, forward their own personal, knowledge base, and then beyond that, have them join the community called the internet. 3 more billion people on the internet opens up a whole world to technology, to solving issues, conflicts, the same situation we're talking about or the same opportunity that came out with folding proteins. Businesses would grow. You now have 3, you've doubled your base.
Yeah.
You've doubled it. And I think that the education piece is so important and needs to be forwarded. Like, let's just erase the cost of getting a higher education.
Well, here's the deal. How did we get where we are? Education.
That's right.
Right? Whether it was through formal schooling, or whether it was from our parents or people on the streets, even on the
YouTube.
Let's talk about YouTube or even somebody in the street, right?
The studio is a product of YouTube watching.
You learned something from somebody,
right,
that was some sort of mentor, right?
Yep.
And so it's all about education. It's what you learn. Now, you can learn something from a source and take it the wrong way, or you can take that learning and do something else with it, something to better the environment, better the world, better whatever, right? So it's like you look at a lot of people, a lot of the smartest people that have made impact in the world haven't gone to university to get a formal education, but the point is they still got an education at some level,
right?
And so education is the key, and education gives you choice. You can, if lack of education only gives you a certain pool to choose from. The more education you have, the bigger the pool, the better your choice.
Right.
And I think that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Some people are always going to make bad choices. You can't stop that.
Yeah.
But you educate them enough to give them all the variables that maybe that choice may not be as bad.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it really ends up being. Is you can't put rules to force people to do something. It's as effective as it's going to be, right? Yes, there's some level of effectiveness.
Some people follow the rules.
Yeah.
Sure.
But what about giving them the tools to make a better choice and giving them the groundwork to base those choices on an educated set of variables that let them go back over to morality, right?
Yeah.
And education gives you the ability to figure out your own level of morality and kind of gives you the tools to make your own choices inside of that.
Right.
Right. And that's really what it ends up being. So I think we're going back to, yes, education is the key.
Education is the key. Then the question is, because you're going to have people who take this technology, they're gonna run with it. They're gonna make the world a better place. And I believe all human beings have that capacity, right? To do that. And then all human beings have the capacity to completely fuck that up. It's awful. But we do that on a regular basis. And dignity is a big piece of it. Like, we go to war for things like that. But think about the guy who gets a great education. He's knowledgeable. He understands all this, and then he uses it for ill. What do you do with that guy? Or you just can't mitigate that. You got to try to and then but he does have choices. Maybe he's making the wrong choices. All that eventually gets found out. But like Bernie Madoff, right? It takes a while, and people lost a lot of money, and now he's in prison. The only guy at that level of financial embezzlement, or whatever you want to call it, that has gone to prison, because all the guys that he robbed from, many of them are criminals too, and they're not in prison. The reason he went is because he ripped off the 1%.
Well, here's the thing. First off, if we had adequate education, would that person have been able to persist?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first question,
Right.
Right. The other thing is, you're always going to have somebody that's going to it's going to abuse.
It's not going to happen in a vacuum either. It's
Yeah.
not just going to be him at his keyboard doing his thing. If that person's really going to affect and make a major, bid for somebody's technology or somebody's information or credit cards or whatever, he's probably going to have a team. So he won't do it in a vacuum.
But then it goes back to, if there's education at play,
Mm-hmm.
there's there's a lot more variables that team could go, wait, I don't want to be part of this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, you're not going to solve it's not going to solve everything, and laws are still needed.
Mm-hmm.
We just got to, laws should be there. See, I think laws will still be needed,
Mm-hmm.
but laws shouldn't be there to restrict progress. It should be there to rehabilitate offenders, basically.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, where that line
That
is,
makes
I
sense.
have no idea.
Yeah.
Right. It is still one of those things that people smarter than I have to figure out.
You're pretty smart, dude.
But I think where I am a big believer is that the more we educate, the better choices people can make.
I agree with that completely, 100%. And I think that getting that into their hands is happening right now.
Yeah. Well, and look at the tools like we've got at Landmark,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And again, not to plug Landmark.
Oh, I plug it all the time. LandmarkWorldwide.com.
But the tools
Love
why
Landmark.
we are part of that group
Mm-hmm.
is because the tools we get in being able to communicate with each other, even in times of conflict,
Right.
is amazing. Is some of the tools, so, like, there's the whole conversation about how you perceive and how it seems to you and all of that. But inside of that, you can run up against a conflict with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the tools to just go, hey, I think this is what's going on. And you're able to diffuse the conflict and talk through and solve whatever's there to be solved.
Right.
Right. And I think tools like that inside of education for everybody, again, goes back to, do we need to go to war, or do we need to just sit across the table and say, this is what the deal is. I got butt hurt. My dignity was impacted
Yeah.
by it, and I'm pissed off.
Right.
And it could be most of these things end up with, oh shit, I didn't know I did that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like 90% of conversations we've ever had was like, I didn't know I was doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And what if that becomes part of our normal day-to-day life?
Huh.
Right? Like
Becoming aware of it. And
Yeah.
number one, awareness, I think, is, so if we can, advance not the cultural, the global awareness of, of human beings, mankind, elevating that awareness and getting that most of those conflicts are really a conversation away from being resolved, right? Really just that simple. And it could take 5 minutes, it could take 10 minutes, but those resolutions could last for a lifetime,
it'll create solving that one conflict could create a relationship for a lifetime.
Yes, that's what I meant. Okay. Yes. Without
And
a doubt.
a fulfilling relationship.
Yeah. Get rid of the borders, man. right?
Well, that's going to solve itself.
Free up education, get rid of the borders. Yeah, you're right. It's already, they're eliminated as far as I'm concerned when we're talking about, you know, the internet. Digitally, we have no borders. Actually, we have borders, but they're man-made.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and then we start looking at what has to happen as a culture or as the world goes forward.
Well, I'll throw one more mix into this.
Go ahead.
So if you look at why we have borders,
Mm-hmm.
we have borders to control, we have borders to protect culture, we have borders to protect economies, right? A lot of our borders are political borders there to protect economy, protect trade, right?
Right.
And trade is protected through monetary policy. Why are we afraid of Bitcoin?
Right.
Simple. Bitcoin or any sort of electronic currency like that actually puts pressure on the whole monetary policy or the monetary system, or not the gold standard anymore, the
American dollar.
Bretton Woods system.
Right.
And so if Bitcoin progresses to the point that we think it's going to progress, I think even those borders conversation starts to get impacted.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a lot of people don't know what Bitcoin is.
Well, I'll let you take this.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not, because Bitcoin to me is it's kind of a mystery. I understand it a little bit, but it's the ability to take all currencies, right, funnel it into Bitcoin and have it all be the same.
I think it's a little more than that. So
tell me, because I don't know. That's what I know.
Yeah,
of it.
I don't know it
We can look
that
it up,
well,
man.
and it's probably a podcast for it's another podcast
Another
recommendation.
podcast for another time.
But here's the deal: Bitcoin is a currency that is not controlled or monetary policy. Like it's a universal currency that basically exists in the computer world.
Check this out, dude. We're going to get the explanation from the internet.
At a very basic level, Bitcoin is just a digital file or ledger that contains names and balances, and people exchange money by changing this file. When Bob sells Carol a lawnmower for 5.2 Bitcoins, Bob's balance goes up by 5.2 and Carol's down by 5.2. There's no gold or government-issued money backing these numbers. Bob is only willing to trade his real-life lawnmower for a higher number in this digital file because he has faith that other people will also trust the system. So who maintains this ledger and makes sure no one cheats? One goal of Bitcoin is to avoid any centralized control, so every participant maintains their own copy of the ledger. One surprising consequence of this is that everyone can see everyone else's balances, although the real system only uses account numbers and not names, so there's some level of anonymity. If everyone maintains their own ledger, how are all the ledgers kept in sync as money is transferred? At a basic level, when you want to send money, you simply tell everyone else by broadcasting a message with your account number, the receivers, and the amount. Everyone across the entire world then updates their ledger. As a quick aside, I'm describing how Bitcoin works for power users, people who help maintain the system. You can also just use the system to send and receive money, though, without maintaining a ledger. If sending money is as simple as creating a message with some account numbers, what's to stop a thief, Alice, from spending Bob's money by using his account number? Like a pen and paper check, Bitcoin requires a kind of signature to prove that the sender is the real owner of an account, but is based on math rather than handwriting. When a new account number is created, it comes along with a private key mathematically linked to that account number. If you've heard of a Bitcoin wallet, these keys are what it holds and are what allow you to create signatures. To create a signature, a private key and the text from a transaction are fed into a special cryptographic function. Another function allows other people to check the signature, making sure it was created by the account owner and that it applies to that specific transaction. Unlike the handwritten version, these signatures can't be copied and reused in the future, as they're unique to each transaction. While the mathematical signatures prove who sent a transaction, they can't prove when it was sent, and this turns out to be problematic. In our traditional banking system, if Alice wrote 2 checks but only had enough money to cover one of them, the bank would pay the first person attempting to cash his check but refuse the second because Alice's account would be empty. So the order of these checks is critical because it determines who should get paid. Unfortunately, order is much harder to determine in Bitcoin, where instead of a single bank, there are individuals all over the world. Network delays might cause transactions to arrive in different orders in different places, and fraudsters could lie about timestamps. Two recipients might both think their transaction is first and ship a product, effectively allowing Alice to spend money twice. Bitcoin prevents this by providing a way for the entire world to decide on transaction order. As new transactions are created, they go into a pool of pending transactions, and from here they'll be sorted into a giant chain that locks in their order. To select which transaction is next, a kind of mathematical lottery is held. Participants select a pending transaction of their choice and begin trying to solve a special problem that will link it to the end of the chain. The first person to find a solution wins and gets to have their transaction selected as next in the chain. So what's this linking problem? It's based on a special function called a cryptographic hash. As scary as this sounds, it just mixes up its inputs and spits out a number, but it's special because it's irreversible. There's no easy way to start with an output and then find an input that generates it other than by making lots of guesses. And this is literally what people are doing in Bitcoin, feeding this function random numbers until the output meets certain criteria. Besides a random guess, you also input a transaction from the pending pool and chain, which is where the linking part comes in. So the lottery provides a way for the entire world to decide which transaction is next, but the math behind it also helps ensure everyone agrees about past transactions too. Suppose you're joining the network for the first time and request a copy of the transaction chain to get caught up but receive several different versions. Which one should you trust? Ideally, you would trust the one that the majority of people are using, but determining this on the internet is difficult. What would stop a single person from voting millions of times? Bitcoin prevents this by requiring people to solve math problems to vote. This causes each vote to have a cost in computing power, making it unlikely that a single person or group could ever afford to outvote or outcompute the majority of users. The transaction ordering process described before actually provides the voting system. Part of the input to the linking problem is a transaction from the end of a chain, so each guess is effectively a vote for that chain. But how are all the votes tallied? Because the cryptographic hash function has well-defined statistical properties, you can look at any given answer and estimate how many guesses it took to find it, just like estimating how many coin flips it would take to get 100 heads in a row. So the links in a chain not only put transactions in order, but also act as an effective vote tally, making it easy to see which chain most people are using. Finally, how does money get created? Every time someone wins the lottery to pick the next transaction in the chain, new bitcoins are created out of thin air and awarded to their account. Solving these problems is commonly called mining, as this is how money enters the system, but the main purpose of the math is to make sure everyone's ledgers agree. The math simply provides a convenient way to randomly distribute money into the world. In fact, sometime around 2140, no more money will be created and participants will only be paid from fees added onto transactions. I hope this gives you a quick sense for how Bitcoin works. If you'd like a more detailed summary, check out my 22-minute video, How Bitcoin Works Under the Hood.
Genius. That was pretty deep, though.
Yeah. So where I was going with that is it is not controlled by any sort of country.
Right. There's no centralized bank.
No centralized bank.
Right.
So what scares economists, including one of my professors who gave us a failing grade for promoting Bitcoin.
You really got a failing. That's awesome.
We didn't get a failing grade. We got a less than A grade
right.
because he didn't agree with the analysis on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know who you are, Professor.
That's awesome.
No, the point is it scares economists because they can't control it.
Right.
And you can't control it inside of a country border.
That's true.
And so going back to why we even started this conversation is the things like this will start to break down those borders. You break down the commas, you now globalize commerce to a global currency.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all of these things like exchange rates and interest rates and all of that stuff go away. Obviously, the central bank's freaking out because they're losing control.
Man, they're grafting us left and right. Every transaction that we're involved in, right? They're catching a little bit. And that's the thing that bothers me is that how much of that money, right, needlessly being charged to me or my bank account or whatever.
Well, see, now you're starting to get into the whole
policies,
why socialism works, all of that. Like remember that every bit of the internet, somebody's paying for the internet. It is not free.
That's right.
And that's us. We are paying for the internet inside of those fees.
$50 a month from Cox.
Well, that's not even that.
That's just
right?
access. That's all that is.
Yeah, just somebody's paying for all those lines that go between the world.
That's right.
Somebody pays. We have to pay for the highways we drive our cars on.
That's right.
We got to pay for cleaning the air.
Yeah. By the way, your $50 a month or my $100 a month did not pay the backhoe driver that brought in the cable to
Right.
this neighborhood. $50 a month, really?
So
Yeah.
the point is
It's all
that
coming from
money
somewhere.
is coming from things like this.
Mhm.
It's what drives the system.
Yes.
So you can't just go in and say we're gonna do this and we're gonna take away we're gonna save money because of that. We're actually not gonna be able to live because the infrastructure won't have the funding that it has, right?
Right.
Somebody has to pay for that infrastructure.
Right.
So I think it's naive to look at this going, we're going to change the world by doing everything in Bitcoin, and we're not going to have to pay those transaction fees. Well, guess what? Your water, your sewage, all of
Yeah.
that has to get paid for somehow.
Somehow.
And
yeah.
it's not so today we're paying what, $50 on the internet, but that could be $500 because of the actual cost to actually deliver that service
Right.
without all of that funding, right?
Yeah.
But again, where I think I'm going with this is the more of these traditional barriers we take down, the more we open up the world to actually be able to communicate, collaborate, educate, and interact. The better, the more we can reduce that level of conflict, that to human versus human to external sources to another human being, right?
Yeah.
And I think the group influence gets a little more marginalized, and we go more to a human contact.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to reduce conflict, but again, that's kind of wishful thinking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's not necessarily. I would disagree that it's wishful thinking. I think it's more like I think you're kind of seeing forward. Like I know this guy Gary Vaynerchuk, who is he is like what's happening right now kind of guy, and he's brilliant. I mean, really brilliant. But what it takes is having that kind of vision to be able to see what's happening right now, what the future holds, what's out there for us, right? As a human race. And I think that this is a big piece of changing the world, literally, legitimately, right? Having things work because of what you said was we've got to have a way to be able to have person-to-person communication to eliminate all those conflicts.
Yep.
And without it, right? And without those three basic needs, you got to feed them, we got to clothe them, and we got to get them in a safe place to live. You know, those are the basics.
Well, feel safe.
Okay.
There's a difference between safe place to live and feeling safe.
Sure.
And I think it's as a human being, we gotta feel safe.
Yeah. That's huge. Well, what else, man?
That's it.
That's it. That's our podcast. So, I mean, I'm jazzed about it, and the feeling that I want to leave all of our listeners with, is that there are people out there like yourself who are on a mission to see the world change through technology, through human interaction, through awareness, elevating our consciousness. I mean, so you're a big deal. Man, I'm totally excited about what's possible because I'm a nerd. I love, dude, everything. Like we start talking about Star Trek and other stuff. It's all coming to pass. Somebody was a visionary at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They saw it happening, right? They saw a culture and a world that could be better and bigger and with much more love and acceptance. You know, and things are changing in America, man. You know, gays can get married now. I mean, that's a federal law now. You know, and just recently there was a woman in Kentucky, I think it was, who stood up for her beliefs, and I'm okay with her standing up for her beliefs as a Christian to not issue. You know, I'm in agreement with her standing up for her beliefs as a Christian. Mm-hmm. However, she had a job to do, and so she didn't do her job, and there is a law in place.
She went to jail, right?
She went to jail.
Yeah.
She's in jail right now for breaking the law. Now, it wasn't breaking the law that she had a improper belief system or anything else like that, but that her job mandates that she hand out marriage certificates, and a gay couple went in to go and get their marriage certificate handled, and guess what? She denied them. And it was put up on the internet within minutes. This conversation that was actually, it's crazy, right? Because we all have these phones, these smartphones, where we can do anything with them. I can videotape people, cops and, how they're interacting with the public. You can, you can videotape a woman who's saying, based on my beliefs, I'm not going to allow you to get married if you're gay. And it was up in minutes. We're changing the world, man.
That actually is one segue to something I do want to touch on.
Let's do it.
With these phones that we all have, which most of our kids have.
Yes.
We provide internet access. Now, the challenge with that is with working with law enforcement, one of the things I've noticed is the number of children that are sexually abused from internet sources. And a lot of these are from these mobile devices.
Wow.
The last stat I saw, 264 new cases a week nationally are added into what's called this NICMEX database, which is a database that tracks, law enforcement database that tracks sexual abuse of minors through internet sources. To me, that's a very high number. 264 of our kids are impacted by that. Now, here's the deal. So as CISSPs, which is one of the certifications I have under information security, we belong to an organization, a certifying body called ISC Squared. And that organization has a foundation that has developed training for these kids, training on being safe and secure on the internet.
Right.
And we deliver that to the schools. It's my pet project, which is we deliver it to the schools as volunteers to train these kids for the schools. Now, one of the things I'm working on with local law enforcement is to train SROs, a school resource officer, is a police officer that is attached to the school to provide not only law enforcement duties but education.
Right.
And my goal is to train all the SROs in Arizona, hell, nationally if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But train all the SROs at least in Phoenix or the greater Phoenix area to be able to deliver this type of training to all our kids in the schools and kind of get a greater group, right? Now here's the challenge. It's when you look at it, when you look at parents, there are two types of parents. The parent that goes, not my kid, or the parent that has no clue about how to do it.
Right.
So to me, educating these parents and educating these kids on the dangers of the internet and how to protect them is kind of really important. Because you triggered that when you talk about the mobile device, right?
Yeah.
The deal is, if you have an iPhone, the iPhone has protection services built all already into the phone. It's just a matter of turning them on.
Yeah.
And if you look, most of our kids who do have the Apple product because it's the cool thing, right? Actually have this technology built in. No one's turned it on for them.
Wow.
And they're able to get to things that they shouldn't be able to get to. Right. So it's a matter of literally just getting there and just turning this thing on to protect this kid from installing Snapchat or any of these kind of apps that have got a lot of these kids into trouble.
Yeah.
The problem is this. It's not that they're looking at things they shouldn't be looking at. It's they get caught into being developed by a pedophile or something like that and get themselves into trouble. One situation I know of where a child lost her entire future because somebody talked her into making a video that she shouldn't have and sharing it on the internet.
Oh man.
And she, like any sort of situation, right? It's like you can imagine what happens to these kids. Like we've seen so many cases of sexting that has gone viral, and kids have killed themselves over it. Like what? It's like our kids are getting to that point that they're so ashamed that they got to kill themselves just because somebody talked them into this over the internet, right? And it was probably using a mobile phone. Now, taking the phones away from our kids, I don't believe is the solution.
No.
You can't cripple our kids' ability to use technology and enhance and learn from it. What we need to do is educate them on the proper uses and the dangers of it.
Right.
And maybe turn on the protection tools, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of products out there that are available for Android, iPhone, that
there's an app for that.
Yeah, we'll give you a copy of everything they're doing on the internet. Be vigilant. Look through that copy every night, right? But again, it comes down to...
It's parenting.
Yeah, but it comes down to education.
Right.
Educate our kids on what the dangers are,
educate our parents.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm kind of clueless to that. right? Like my daughter has Snapchat. We Snapchat back and forth. And I don't see it as a danger, but if she was 12 years old, she's 17. If she was 12 years old or 13 years old, who knows what's going on, because it disappears. That message comes up, boom, they get to see it, and then it disappears.
Well, it's not really disappeared. There's
yeah.
ways to capture and keep that message.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, man. And you're involved with law enforcement in changing that. So that's a big deal. It's a huge deal.
If anything, I always say,
do you have a website or a Facebook page, or how would somebody get in touch with you if they were an SRO or they were somebody that wanted to?
So if you reach out to ISC Squared itself,
okay,
they'll actually, if you go into ISC Squared and you look up, so go to www.iscsquared.
Okay. .com or
.org.
.org. Okay. Put that up on the monitor. Here we go.
And you go online, safe and secure.
This is what you're looking for. Let's see here.
Click on scroll right there. See this on the right hand side? It says right there. Safe and secure online.
There it is. I don't know if you saw me click that, but
that talks about the program and everything that's doing it. We just run it for Arizona. It's all over the world. IC Squared is a worldwide organization. This training is done in every country in the world that we're involved in. So literally reach down. There's a link on there that can actually get contact information. They'll forward it to the relevant group.
Okay.
And this is not just SROs. This is
incredible.
Any parent, any school, anybody can make that request, and you'll have a volunteer that is trained, certified, and cleared, under law enforcement cleared, to actually be with kids.
Wow.
So, and these people are like us. They're they're industry professionals with high-ranking certifications that will come out and actually do the training.
I love this, man. This is incredible. I'm going to start to promote this. Yeah, absolutely. Be the change. So you can actually give, you can advocate, or you can be a volunteer. Yeah, now and there's a process to that.
To be a volunteer, you actually have to go through the training. You actually have to go through fingerprinting and clearance, and you actually have to be a CISSP as well.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. So you have
CISSP or CSSP?
CISSP.
Okay. Okay.
Certified Information Security Systems Professional.
Okay. All right. I haven't gone after that yet. I've just kept my CCNP around. I'm getting AWS Solutions Architect next week.
So the CISSP exams, like the CCIE, it is a 6-hour long exam. If you're allowed to go to the restroom, and you do go to the restroom, there'll be a security guard in there with you.
The book for the CISSP,
it's huge.
It's like,
it's one of those exams you will not pass if you don't have the background to do it.
Yeah. If you haven't been in, and that's one of the things too. There's a requirement to be 5 years as a security professional with a company, or at least within a company, having contact with the security professionals. And then you also have to be, sponsored by an active CISSP.
Yes. Yeah. So somebody's got to vouch for you. It's not to bash on the Microsoft certifications, but it's not a Microsoft certification.
Which they're not that easy either. But CISSP is next level stuff, man. So it's great, man. Thank you for being on the podcast. No kidding. This is a treat for me. Normally we're talking about boats and girls but that's my fallback too, because I like boats and girls and cars and stuff like that. But to be able to talk about technology, to talk about how it's going to change the world and how it is changing the world, Bitcoin, man, I had no idea, right? No idea. So I got an education there, and then also what's happening with the new trade laws, or the new way of doing business globally, that allows for people, right, like you and I, to be interconnected and have relationships globally. That's what I love about like FaceTime and Google Chat or Google whatever that is. All of those technologies are really bringing the world together. I used to complain a lot about kids that would sit there and they'd be like, or you would go to a restaurant, and I've had this complaint. No kidding. I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, God damn, look at that couple over there. And they're just doing this, and maybe they're taking pictures or whatever, but they're in their phones, and they're at the restaurant together with their phones in their faces. And I'm like, I judge them for it. I'm like, man, you're together, right? But guess what? typically, if they didn't have the phone, they'd be sitting there kind of just not talking at all.
Or they wouldn't be there.
Or they wouldn't even be there. At least now they have they can be there and be doing something that they want to do. They're together, which is important, but it's not a bad thing. Maybe they're texting, hey, I'm at dinner with the love of my life. Boom, here's a pic. And then, it goes up on Facebook and it becomes part of the permanent record, which is another podcast that I have. It's called Permanent Record Podcast with Dan Long, the legend, and Mike G. Very different topic. But that used to bother me. But now I can see it as it's actually something that brings people together.
Communication is not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Whatever form it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Anthony, you are a fucking big deal. You're a big fucking deal, and you're all right with it.
Yep.
Keep doing what you're doing, man, and I hope to have you back. I really do. All right?
Awesome. Thank you.
That's it for today. Thanks.
Thank you for watching The Edge Podcast with Mike G. I hope you enjoyed the episode that you just watched. Please subscribe, like, and comment. We really want to know what you think about The Edge Podcast.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Cause I'm the type of nigga that's built to last.